couple of minutes past the hour, so just sit tight. I will remind you that when you want to ask a question, please be sure to utilize the questions and chat function in your dashboard for GoToWebinar. As you know and are aware, you are put on mute as you start up the program. So if you have any questions, please put them through those two options, and we will check those at the end of the webinar and answer those accordingly. So we will get back to you here in just a few minutes. Hi, everybody. This is Allie from the LMC. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. You have been put on mute for the start of the program. If you have any questions after the webinar has concluded, you're welcome to put it through the questions and chat functions in the GoToWebinar dashboard. We will be checking those throughout the webinar, and we will answer those in a session after the presentation is done. So feel free to do that if you do come up with any questions, and we will get started here in just a few minutes. We're going to let a couple more people roll in, and then we'll get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, this is Allie from the LMC, the Director of Member and Partner Engagement. We are excited to have a webinar on the branded content project with Pressboard and Narcity Media. And I'm going to introduce Julia Campbell to you now, who is the branded content project lead. If you have any questions, please put them to the question or chat function, and we will check those throughout the webinar and be sure to address those accordingly after the presentation has concluded. And with that, I turn it over to Julia Campbell.
Thank you, Allie. I'll give you guys a little background about the Branded Content Project before we jump in and introduce our amazing presenters today. So the Branded Content Project is part of a strategic partnership between the Local Media Consortium and the Local Media Association, and the funding is coming from the Facebook Journalism Project. The goal of the project really is to facilitate additional growth, revenue, and engagement for publishers of all shapes and sizes, and we've been working with amazing R&D partners as well as some incredible publishers, really learning and growing branded content across all types of media, broadcasters, print publishers, and digital pure plays. Part of our project goal is to educate as many folks as possible about best practices and really what's working and what's not. And that's why we've brought together some fantastic presenters today with the folks from Narcity Media and the folks from Pressboard. So I'm going to introduce our two speakers. First, we're going to introduce Jared Grimm. He is the CEO and co-founder of Pressboard, the branded content platform used by hundreds of media publishers to manage, measure, amplify, and report on their branded content programs. Jared grew up wanting Angela Bauer's job off of Who's the Boss. His career has since spanned mobile, experiential, digital, content marketing disciplines. leading him to work with some of North America's most innovative brands and publishers. Jared is a regular contributor to Ad Age, Forbes, and Entrepreneur.com. Minnie Nguyen is the head of Narcity Media's creative solutions. She leads a team of expert storytellers dedicated to creating and delivering engaging branded content to achieve client goals. Her team has helped promote over thousands of local businesses across Canada and has worked with some of the top media agencies in Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. Minnie has led projects and campaigns for major advertisers such as Spotify, Loto Quebec, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Puma, TD Bank, and many, many others. We are thrilled to have both these folks here today to talk about really what's working and what isn't, and give you guys some background on their origin stories. We're going to kick things off with Jared. Jared, I'll let you jump in here and tell everybody what you guys are up to.
Great, thank you very much. Well, it's great to be here, great to chat with everyone, and I'm excited to ask Minnie a lot of questions about Narcity. We've been a partner with Narcity for quite some time. To give you some background on Pressboard, I won't go back as far as when I started watching Who's the Boss and decided I was going to be in advertising and marketing. But if we fast forward a little bit, I started out getting into the branded content space about 7 years ago. I worked for a publishing group in Canada, and that publishing group owned several properties across different verticals. We sold primarily display, we did some sponsorships, but we were just starting to get into branded content. And one of our big clients was Best Buy, and they were really interested in this. So if you think back, there was no name for it at that point. It wasn't called native advertising. It was just that Best Buy was running a lot of banner ads, and they decided that they were trying to speak to students during back to school, and they thought it'd be better, rather than saying, the prices of laptops or discounts, they thought it would be more interesting if they could help these students decide on which laptops to buy and help them with advice on how to study for tests and anything that related to laptops or technology that students may need as they went back to school, college, university, etc. So they came to us as a publisher and they said, hey, we've been doing display with you for some time. We'd like to see if you guys would do some articles for us and put them on your sites and share them with your audiences. So at that time, it was fairly new. And we said, yeah, we'd love to. We'll write some articles. You guys can sponsor them. We'll do one on how to choose the right laptop. We'll do some on apps that can help you study for upcoming test, things like that. And Best Buy just had a few requirements. They wanted their sponsored content or branded content to be able to reach a certain amount of people. So they asked if we could guarantee the number of people that would read each article. We said, yeah, sure. Sounds like we should be able to do that in digital. And they also said that they would want regular reporting. So this campaign was running during the back to school period, and they asked if they could have reporting for the next 90 days, each day getting a report. We thought that would be fine as well. The challenge that we ran into once we started going was that reporting on content was much different than reporting on display. The Best Buy was interested in things like how long were people spending on these articles? Where had they come from previously? What were they doing after they read the article? Were they scrolling all the way through? All these questions that we didn't really have answers for, but we knew we had to provide back to them. We also found that it was challenging sometimes guaranteeing how many people would read a given article because we were sharing them mainly through organic social channels. We weren't really promoting them in any paid means at that time. So we ran into a lot of challenges. I actually had to hire 2 additional people just to work on this campaign. So we ended up losing a lot of money on it, but it was an interesting test for us. The problem was Best Buy didn't really know how much work we were putting into this, and they came back and they said, this was great, we loved it, and we did 4 articles with you. Holidays coming up, we'd like to do 10 articles with you, and we've even increased the budget, but they only increased it a certain percentage. And when we looked at our numbers, we were just going to be losing even more money if we went ahead with that campaign. So the challenge was we had this client that was super interested in buying more content from us, and we had this challenge internally of the more that they were going to buy, the more money that we were going to lose as a publisher. And that's when I met my co-founder, TM, who's our CTO and a software engineer. And he said, this is a tech problem. He said, the problem is that you're not able to report back very easily. The problem is that you're not really able to guarantee the performance of this content in any specific way. He said, why don't we build you an Iron Man suit? And you meant by Iron Man suit, not quite as cool as it sounds, but I built a bunch of technology that could make this possible for you to be able to sell these campaigns to way more than just Best Buy, but lots of different advertisers. So at that point, I soon after quit my job and we started Pressboard. So we've been around for about 6 years, and we're right at the beginning of this, online branded content. You can remember BuzzFeed was really popular at the time. They had just introduced this idea a couple years before. And so we've been riding the growth of branded content, really focusing on being the technology provider that can enable publishers to be able to do exactly what I was trying to do with Best Buy originally, which is guarantee performance on content, make it super easy to analyze how well it's doing, and make it super easy to report back to clients as well. So since that time, we've started working with more and more publishers, both in Canada, which is where I'm from, as well as many, and in the US, and then we've expanded globally. We work with about 1,000 publishers, and a lot of them are local news publishers. And for me, what's really important, and we see this actually right now, if you look at with coronavirus going on right now, to me, local news has never been more important. I live in a suburb of Vancouver, and what I really want to know is not necessarily what is only on CNN and what's happening in the world, but I want to know what's happening in my neighborhood. Are the schools being shut down? Is there a case nearby? And I'm getting that from my local news publisher. So I'm getting it from my local newspaper website, and it's telling these stories about what's happening right next door to me, what's happening in my community. And so we've always thought that this was a really important thing to be able to get news to people. And being local publishers, the challenge was always the business model, or more recently has been that. So our goal is to be able to support local news publishers in being able to sell more content without having to scale up in resources. And I think that that's a solid way for us to be able to help this industry move forward. And we just believe that branded content is a really good place for that. And I'm happy to have Minnie here because this is, Narcity is such a great example of how a local news publisher is able to expand without having to expand resources and be able to maintain this in a profitable way. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Minnie. And Minnie, I was hoping that you'd be able to give us some background on Narcity for those that aren't as familiar. So why don't we start with how Narcity got started?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jared. So Narcity's story is actually one that I'm always excited to tell and retell again because I think if you're not familiar with Narcity, then you wouldn't know that the company actually, and the brand didn't started with Narcity. It actually started with one of our sub brands and sub properties today that is owned and operated under the Narcity Media organization. That's called MTL Blog. MTL is short for Montreal, and MTL Blog is today a leading destination website where people can find their daily local news about Montreal, everything that there is to know about what's going on in the city, different lists of best places to go eat and drink, and just really everything that is just trending and everything that there is to know. So that's what MTL Blog is today. But if I take you guys back to in the beginning, back in 2012, which is when MTL Blog first started, it started off as a Facebook page. It was actually not a blog, not a website. It was founded by two college friends, Chuck and Josh. Chuck is our CEO today, and Josh is our other co-founder. They both met at a college party, and Josh was a nightlife photographer at the time. And just like any college kids, the things that you look forward most to every week and every weekend is to, go out in town and hit the city's hottest events, hottest parties, hottest nightclubs. Like you wanted to get out there and be seen and just be with the cool people, right? And so Chuck and Josh wanted to find ways to, get clever and find what were the best ways to get into those events and places without spending too much money, right? So they used Josh's nightlife photography skills and was able to get access to all these great events and pass off as media. And he would go in and take pictures and photograph these events and like, you know, at different parties and stuff, and pass out cards to everyone, telling them to, hey, like, check us out on our Facebook page to find your photos, tag yourselves, share it with your friends. And that's pretty much how the page kind of like took off and gained lots of momentum and popularity very, very rapidly. And we're talking about back in 2012 when Facebook was still pretty much king. Instagram was not as popular back then yet. So all things related to photo sharing and all this stuff, it was still all done on Facebook. So so that was a pretty interesting phenomenon too. And naturally, the page evolved into becoming a blog where they started doing event listicles, because a lot of people were demanding for more information and more insights on, hey, like, where can I go to the next event? Like, where are these parties at? Like, all these photos that you guys are taking, like, I want to go to these parties. I want to go to these events. And so the natural evolution to becoming a blog and providing that content and providing that information to the audience was just a natural, it was a natural next step for Chuck and Josh. The demographics of the audience also happened to be the students between the age bracket of 18 to 24, and so that was the main consumer of the content that they were doing, and that's all. It also happens to be people that are consuming that kind of content at that time. And over the years, this demographic and MTL blog has, you know, grown up and matured and aged together, and so did the content. And so today, when we look at MTL blog, it is now a full-on publisher that covers all things from the latest news, the latest headlines, to the most important, you know, just happenings and events that are going on that is related to the city, and still covering, you know, the more lifestyle content, such as, you know, the best places to hit up and the hottest new restaurants that are opening. And now with the success that they saw with MTL blog, Chuck, being the entrepreneurial person that he is, wanted to expand and to grow that success even further outside of Montreal. But with a brand that is so deeply rooted in Montreal, and with its name, MTL being an abbreviation that represents Montreal, he quickly needed to find a new brand that would enable and allow him to expand outside of Montreal. So that's where Narcity came in. It's actually a play on words between narcissist and city, which was the team's interpretation of being super proud and obsessed and being all about your city. And Narcity was born out of that desire to expand and the need to grow, and now has become the flagship brand that is allowing us to expand across Canada. And now we're in the US as well, and the goal and the vision is to, you know, hopefully go global and international.
I knew MTL blog before I even knew Chuck or anybody else, or had started Pressboard, because I spent a fair amount of time at that publisher that I was at. They had a couple Montreal properties. Actually, at that time, they had a MTL blog competitor called Nightlife at the time. So I was super familiar with it. And I remember knowing that it was just these, you know, two guys that kept talking, but they were so ahead of what was happening at clubs and restaurants. And we found ourselves using it quite often to decide where to go for dinner, or what club was happening, or what event to go to. And it was really interesting because there wasn't anything else that was speaking to, I was a little bit outside of the 18 to 24, but not that far, not as far as I am now. And we just found it really interesting to be able to know what was going on by people that really cared about it. And now that it's expanded over to Narcity, I'll hear friends and family, relatives of mine, friends of mine, talk often about Narcity when they go to a new city, which I find really interesting. They'll go to Toronto, they're from Vancouver, and they'll say, oh, we'll check out Narcity and we'll find out what's going on. And I love that idea that you have this local news source that understands what's going on in the city. It's like a friend. It's like when you text a friend and say, hey, where should I go? Except this friend happens to be looking at this every day and publishing a bunch of content. So I can see how that expansion happened, and now into the US. Now, can you talk about how, when you joined the team, what brought you to the Narcity team and what role you went into there.
Yeah, so I joined the team back in 2015. So this was shortly after a year that Narcity had just got launched. So Chuck launched Narcity in 2014, and he attempted to enter the Toronto market. And he had his team, and back then it was a very small team. He had tried to, kind of like replicate the success that he had with MTL Blog, and obviously failed a little bit and succeeded a bit and then failed again. And around 2015, they had encountered an overwhelming volume of demand, and inbound demand from local businesses and local establishments and advertisers wanting to get a piece of this pie that is MTL Blog and Narcity, that had grown so rapidly and that had such a huge reach and such a huge audience, and just wanted to get on the platform, wanted to get promoted, wanted to get in front of our audience, who was also a very, very engaged audience. Because like you just said, Jared, like we, the way that we write our content and the way that we connect with our audience is that, yes, we do treat them very much like a friend. So there was a very familiar tone there. It wasn't, it was just very casual, right? So there's a relationship there between the brand and our consumer. And I think that local businesses really recognize that. And so when I joined, branded content and sponsor content was still very, very, very new. There wasn't much of a team yet. And when I joined, I took on the role of project manager at first. And the objective with that, it was to help handle all of this volume of project and just find a way to just process it and to get it out of the door, to service our clients and just to really figure it out. It was really just me who was handling or attempting to handle, right, to build a structure, to build a team, to build a system on the management side of things, the admin side of things. And then I was working with my colleague at the time who was handling all the creative output of our project. So we were really just two, and we really had to quickly adopt the wing it mentality, right? That startup mentality, and really just figure it out as we go. And sponsor content was also very new, not only just in Montreal, but also just in Canada in general. I think every publisher was still only just figuring out and just, watching left and right to see what the next guy is doing. And so, yeah, and it was very much our reality too, just trying to figure out and slowly build a team and answer to the demand that we had, and just navigate through all of that. So that was the landscape in 2015 when I joined.
Yeah, and given that landscape, so you start off, you're joining a team. Well, actually, you are the entire team when you first start in branded content, and then you grow the team a bit, but your audience is expanding faster than the team. You're going into new cities. You're working with more advertisers. How is it what does scale look like for Narcity as you're going into these other markets and as you're starting to work with more advertisers, but you're not necessarily able to add more and more people to it? Were there some milestones of growth in Narcity's first few years?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest milestone in our team, or in my team, was really when we were finally able to go from a team of two people that had to learn how to be a jack of all trades and had to wear all these different hats, and we had to also learn how to share the very limited resources that we had. We only had a few writers that were writing both branded content and editorial content, and we only really had so many people in the team. And so I think the first biggest milestone is to get to a place where we were able to finally hire expertise and talent that were better than me, and to dedicate that to the branded content team, to dedicate to delivering the campaigns that our clients are trusting us to work on, and really scoping out creatives and talents across Canada to be able to build a network of freelancers. We are now over almost 50 freelancers that combine writers, editors, video talent, influencers, you name it. Like, these are all people that we count on and that we partnered with and locked arms with over the years, and we work on a very regular basis. And it's all still very much on a project to project basis. So we believe that like this has what enabled us to stay agile without having to grow the team too quickly and being I guess preoccupied with having to figure out how to manage people as opposed to manage the demand that we still that at that time was still very much a high number, a high volume. So that was our number one priority, because we didn't want to lose business, we didn't want to lose our clients' trust as well, and we were still in our growing stages, and we did need that financial support as well that we were getting from these local advertisers and all these inbound leads. So the priority at that time was that. But definitely, I think the milestone was really when we were finally able to grow out of the team of 2 people and being able to grow now into a team of, we're still very small. So like, yes, I talk about growth, but we're still very small. We're still only 5 people today, although at some point we were 7, and then we went down to 6, and now we're 5, and we're actually in a hiring spree again right now. But again, I think that we've been very careful into not hiring too aggressively, because we always want to make sure that we kept control of the quality of our output and the quality of our content, and that can get difficult. That can become difficult when you're so preoccupied with managing people as opposed to managing the content and the deliverables, right? So I'd say that was kind of like the biggest turning point for myself and for my team.
Yeah, I remember this time. This is when Pressboard, when we first started working with Narcity and MTL Blog, the growth around the audience was really strong. So you have all these freelancers, they're creating some really good content in their local cities and their local markets, and getting more and more people. The Facebook page is taking off, a lot of people are following it. So you have this great audience. The sales side of it, meaning, okay, how are we going to drive revenue, became, I remember talking to Chuck about this, and it becoming the new challenge. It was like, okay, now we have this massive audience. We are in all of these different markets. We've set up a really strong editorial style process where we can use freelancers and full-time employees to be able to cover that off. On the sales side, you now have the desire to reach out to all of these advertisers, both national advertisers and local advertisers. Can you speak to some of the ways that you were able to do that?
Yeah, so like the sales initiatives at Narcity has definitely been something that has kind of like gone through the trenches, in a sense that like we used to be a really big team in the beginning days, and then had to scale that down because like we didn't have the right talent, or that we just didn't have the right people in place, and then we encountered challenges when we didn't have the right expertise to service agencies that came into the picture. We didn't have, the right, I guess, proper know-how or tools or expertise in place to do that. So, now looking back and where we are today, we're a full team of now 5 account executives who are all dedicated to different markets still in Canada. And Narcity, I think we've been able to really leverage like the relationships that have been built over the years with local advertisers, local businesses, but also with these media agencies, and that is what has kept just the constant business and the projects coming in and generating those the revenues from these campaigns, and really going out there and making sure that Narcity is at the top of mind of our agency partners and even like local businesses, to make sure that we're included in their media plans, et cetera, et cetera. And definitely, our partnership with Pressboard has also helped us tremendously as well over the years, because you guys also have played a role in connecting us with with clients on your side, right? And have enabled our teams to form these relationships with and some of those relationships today, they've evolved into like some of our biggest clients today. And the Pressboard tool has really helped us kind of like bridge those relationships for sure. So yeah.
And for everyone listening here on the webinar, what we're going to do is I have a couple more questions for Minnie on the growth of Narcity, and then we're going to go through a campaign process. So how an advertiser uses Pressboard's marketplace to find Narcity, and then how Narcity works with them and then reports back to them. So we'll go through an example from Jameson's in just a moment. Now, from the advertiser side, my experience when I was on the publishing side was with Best Buy. And it was around this idea around guaranteed performance and daily reporting. What have you found from ad agencies, from local clients? What do they really require from you that's with branded content that may be different from, just when they're buying display ads?
Yeah, so I love this question because I feel like branded content, and I think all of our audience today can also may relate to that. Is I think it's still continuous education that we still need to do with, especially with the more smaller local businesses in terms of branded content. But from all the relationships that we have built over the years, that our account executives have built with the larger media companies, the larger agencies, I think now anybody who gets into branded content advertising understand that it is a form of storytelling. It is a medium and or a vehicle that allows the brand to connect with the end consumer through the form of an article story, or like a video, or like an image on social media, or a podcast, what have you. At the end of the day, is really we're writing stories, and we're hoping that it connects to the audience. And what we're trading for is their time, is their attention. And so what we try to educate our clients and what we try to aim for is to, well, how do we capture that attention, and what are we going to be measuring to make sure that your brand was received on the consumer's end, whether it's through an article, then we're talking about how many people have seen that article that we've worked hard on producing, how many people have engaged with it, how much time have they spent with it, and how far have they gone through their articles, and have they even clicked through any of the links that we've placed in it to drive them back to the client's page. If it's a video, then we're talking about like how far along have they watched a video, enough to have, I guess, receive the message that was integrated into the content. So ultimately, every piece of data and every metric that we're measuring, it really boils down to measuring the attention that we were able to capture from the audience side. And Narcity has really loved leveraging Pressboard's platform to easily bring all of that data together into like a nice platform, an easy dashboard or report that will allow to, in return, tell that story to the client. So tell the story of how the consumer engage with the content that places the client within it, and in a way that is simple, in a way that that is easy to understand, and that will make sure that that they are happy at the end of the day, that that they're getting what they're looking for. And so, Pressboard has really helped us facilitate that storytelling to the client, to capture all that data in an organized and simple way, to facilitate that understanding and that education on the client side.
Cool. And before we jump into the campaign, I'm curious, how big of a part of your business is content, whether it's branded content or social posts or otherwise? And I won't make you give a revenue number here on the webinar, but what percentage of the campaigns that you're running would you say involve content in some way?
I would say, so are you asking in regards to the entire website of our properties?
Yeah, basically, of the clients that come in and they want to work with Narcity or MTL Blog, what percentage of them are asking if you can include content as part of the program that they work on with you?
Oh, I would say a good like 70 to 80% because we still get a lot of requests and demand for display and for programmatic for sure. Because I think that's something that's going to be around in digital for, like it's still going to be around, but more and more, like I think content it represents like a good 70 to 80% of all of our campaign plans and programs that we pitch to our clients and to our media partners. So yeah, it is an important component of the campaign for the client for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty important point. And from my experience working with lots of publishers, it's becoming more and more a big part of what advertisers are looking for. They can often buy display programmatically really easily through DSPs or through Google or otherwise. But when it comes to, hey, I want to work with a publisher, I want something told in their voice, I want their expertise with their audience, usually that means, can they work with content? And one of the parts that we've always found we're lacking, or I did when I was on the publisher side, was the tool sets. And so that's what we set out to build. I've just noticed that it's becoming a bigger and bigger share of what advertisers expect from publishers. So it's interesting. And I'm curious if other people in the audience are seeing similar percentage of their campaigns at that 70 or 80%, or if it's lower than that. So feel free, audience, to ask any questions or provide any details on that, and we can address them afterwards. So what I want to talk about next is how the campaign process works. So let's talk about the Jameson's campaign. I'll start off by talking a little bit about the marketplace. So Pressboard runs a marketplace which has all of the various publishers in it. This is usually the entry point when a publisher starts working with Pressboard. They put this great media kit into the marketplace, and on the other side of the marketplace, you have brands and advertisers and agencies using it as a research tool to decide who to work with. So in Jameson's case, which was Jameson's whiskey, which is alcohol brand, if you don't know, and they were looking to work with local publishers around St. Patrick's Day last year. So the agency and Jameson's went into the marketplace, and they really started searching for who has an audience between a certain age group, what type of gender split, what markets, and then what content they're looking for. And with this specific campaign, because of the targeting that Jameson's was interested in, Narcity came up really high in that, and Narcity was selected as one of them. So the agency and Jameson's go into the marketplace, they do their research, all the data is there, it's these live media kits, and then they can request a proposal directly from Narcity, and that's what they did. And so I think where we're happy that this helps out is, like you said, you have a small team. It doesn't mean you can't be in every agency and every client every day. It's just not feasible. And it's getting harder and harder to get meetings with agencies and buyers. So by having a research tool out there, which Narcity is a part of, allows you to have that. And so anyone who uses Pressboard, becomes a part of that marketplace and can receive some inbound leads. And that was the start of the Jameson program. But from there, it passes off from Pressboard directly over to the Narcity team. So Minnie, I'm going to ask you, once that lead comes in and you start working together on the campaign, because this is more than display ads, you're talking about content and briefing. How do you bring a client into the Narcity version of the Pressboard platform?
Yeah, so any campaign process, it's split in between like a pre-sale production and then post-production. So the very first people that clients interact with would be the sales team. So either there's an account executive that is assigned to that client. We answer the requests that comes into our inbox on the marketplace with the Pressboard tool. And as you can see on the screenshot here, the entire platform makes it really easy to communicate with clients, and where we can have exchanges, better understand what the campaign is about, better understand what the requests are, and then once the client is ready to I guess commit and to proceed forward with us, then that contact gets introduced to the production team, who is a dedicated team team that will take care of the execution. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the process, where we are, you know, drafting up drafts of the content and going through revision processes with the client, making sure that everyone's happy with the content that we've produced and that it answered the brief properly. And once all of that is approved and everyone is happy, then the platform also makes it really easy for us to walk the client through the go-to market, like to go live, right, of any campaign. It all takes place in the platform. Like, you know, we rarely ever really even need to leave the platform, because it combines collaboration tool and the management tool of the different assets, and just the back and forth conversations and the exchanges with the client. So the platform makes it really easy to do that. And then once it goes live, we're able to plug in the URLs of the various content that is part of that campaign program. And the clients have access to this dashboard, and they can follow the progress of it, and have everything all in one place and neatly organized and very clearly identified. So the management aspect of it makes it really easy. It makes sharing files and exchanging communication very easy, and all done very effectively in one place. So a lot of our clients are always looking for that turnkey solution, right? They don't, I mean, like, content is already something that a lot of our clients have expressed can be very difficult and complicated, and also time consuming. So we're always looking for ways to make that easier for the client, make sure that the client experience is a pleasant one, and make them feel like, hey, like, it's content doesn't need to be that hard, you know, like it is a collaborative it is a collaborative thing between the client and the publisher, but it doesn't need to be difficult. And a platform like Pressboard has allowed us to accomplish that.
And what I think is great about this campaign, as an example, is that it was for St. Patrick's Day. What Jameson was really looking for was local expertise, because one of the stories was in Montreal. So what are the best places for a St. Patrick's Day party in Montreal? What's the best one in Toronto, Vancouver? Which also means that this isn't one article that you're producing. You're producing custom content on different properties that have to be distributed to different audiences in those places. So there's a lot of local expertise that has to come into play with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So for Jameson's case here is that, yes, they did book 3 pieces of content across all of our 3 platforms in Montreal, in Toronto, and in Vancouver, and all 3 of these pieces had to be produced at the same time and also published at the same time, because they were all with the objective of promoting the St. Patrick's initiative that Jameson had at that time, and they wanted to promote, like, the various bars that they were going to be present at, that they had events at. And so what we did here is we, you know, put together a really cool interactive map of all of these different bars and locations that Jameson was going to be at in these 3 different cities, and produce a really cool, exciting list of these places that Jameson was going to be at in these 3 cities, and was able to get that out in no time, and launch it all at the same time as well.
Yeah, you can actually see in this screenshot, you guys had set some goals for how many views you'd get on each of these, and looking at around, you know, just under 4,000 per story, and you significantly exceeded this with 8,000 on MTL blog, 6,000 on the Toronto or the Vancouver one, and then 8,000 on Toronto. And I know people are sometimes, we've talked to publishers before, and sometimes there's this idea of you build the report and you send it 6 weeks after the campaign start, right? So you send it quite a bit later. But I can imagine with something timely like St. Patrick's Day, the idea that a client is able to see how a story is performing, especially if it's performing really well, is really important to them. It keeps them engaged with the campaign throughout, rather than waiting until after it's already passed and then getting a, you know, PDF report sent to them 2 weeks later.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like and Jameson, and just like any other clients, I think that's something that they really appreciate, and like, you know, wanting to always be in tune and like, you know, and updated on how the performance of their content is doing, especially for a topic that is very time sensitive. When we're talking about an event, and we're talking about driving foot traffic or driving ticket sales to a specific event, like, you know, so being able to keep to stay in touch and stay updated with how the performance of the campaign is going on is very crucial for these types of clients. And a platform like Pressboard allows us to measure real-time analytics and track the performance as they progress. And all of that is done online. It's live, it's in front of them. There's no need to export a different version of a PDF every single time. There's no need to export, like, you know, another an Excel document. And those versions can get very annoying because like they get lost and they get circulated around with the other stakeholders on the client side as well. So having all of the data in one place, living in one platform, makes it super easy to just come back to and refer back to every single time.
Yeah, so one of the features that Narcity uses quite extensively is this idea that you can invite clients in and they can either, you know, be invited into the platform, or you can just share a live report with them where they don't have to log in at all. We've seen Narcity use that quite a bit, and I think it adds again to this idea that can you run a really high quantity of sponsored content or branded content? Like you said, you're doing 70 to 80% of your deals involve content in some way, but without having to build a large team that's just sitting there building reports every day. So we've seen Narcity use this feature a lot, and it's interesting to be able to report on things other than just page views. Narcity has a huge social audience, so I know that you report on Facebook posts and now Instagram posts, etc., all through there. Can you talk about why reporting back to your client on branded content is so important, both for them keeping in the know, but also for them coming back? And because you have such a strong return business, why is reporting so important to your clients?
Yeah, because I think it just it allows them to see what kind of return they get from the investment that they have with us, right? Like I said earlier, you know, content and just like stories, it's not a tangible, like, I guess, way to, like, there's no guarantee that you'll be able to convert an end user. And so when you're investing in content, it becomes more of a priority to make sure that, hey, like, my dollar is going, like, I need to know where my dollar is going, right? I need to know where, if we're investing in content, that it's reaching the right people, and that and it's, you know, communicating to the target audience that the clients are looking for. And I think that, like, immediate access to this kind of data so that we can be agile and then we can be responsive if ever it's not performing to you know, to our client's expectation, or even to our expectation, then we're able to adjust accordingly, and we can act very quickly. And to be able to see this data almost in real time allows us to react a lot quicker than if we had to pull this data manually and build all these different charts and graphics to analyze the number. So it allows us to be responsive, be agile, and optimize wherever needed. And at the same time, and understand the investments and the work that was put into it, and to understand how can we do better next time, and like, how can we do it again maybe next time. So definitely, like, real-time reporting is becoming more important to our clients because of the kind of access that it gives to our clients.
Mm-hmm. And it's always exciting to me. I mean, I'm a huge Narcity fan, as both like an audience, just a member of your audience looking for places to go, but also knowing and seeing your growth over time. And nothing makes us happier than being able to just be the tech layer that facilitates really creative people to tell really interesting stories for lots and lots of brands and drive revenue for the company. I am so bullish on Narcity's growth and going into more markets, and just being able to firsthand see what's happening just from a data perspective and the number of campaigns you're running and the return customers is, I think, inspiring, not just for us that are all in this branded content space, but I hope for the audience as well, that you can run a very efficient, very nimble team that has very high ambitions at the same time. So thanks for going through that and talking about how Jameson came in through the marketplace, how you managed the campaign with the client through the platform, built some really interesting stories that performed exceptionally well above goal, and then were able to easily report so that your team could focus on the next client and the next story from there. So with that, I'd like to open it up for questions to the audience. We've covered that case study now, and I'd love to hear if there are any questions from the audience for myself or Minnie or the LMC themselves.
We do actually have a couple of questions, Jared. The first one is from Bruce Potter, and he wants to know, can you describe your pricing strategy?
That's probably for Minnie regarding, is that pricing strategy related to how Narcity is selling their branded content to customers?
Let me see if I can, I might be able to unmute Bruce. Let me see if I can unmute you, Bruce. Hang on. He says yes. Let me see if I can unmute Bruce real quick. There we go. Bruce, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, that's the question, Jared, is how are you pricing this for advertisers, and are you including pricing for creating the content as well as posting it?
Minnie, that's a great question for you on how you're pricing it for advertisers.
Yeah, it is a great question. So we have different solutions depending on the client's objectives. So like the way that we like to work and our account executive teams like to work is we start with the client. We start with like what the client needs, and you know, getting to know what their objectives are, and understanding what's the end goal of them getting into content, and then we build out a plan and a program that will match those goals. So we do have various editorial packages that respond to different objectives, whether it's to drive foot traffic, or to drive website traffic, or to drive sales, or to generate awareness, or it's really just to create a brand association to the Narcity brand, or to the MTL blog brand. We have different packages that answers these different objectives, and the price points can vary, but our packages always include content, so the production of the content, whether it's editorial, video, or social. There's always a distribution plan as well, so that is sharing the content that we're producing on our various social media platforms, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, etc. And there's always an amplification strategy as well. So the amplification strategy is the budget that the clients are willing to put towards boosting it and promoting the story on our platform. So we're talking about anywhere between, you know, $3,000 to $10,000. It really depends on what the client objective is, and depending on the budget that they have as well. And we try to be flexible, and we try to have always something for everybody. I think that has been the motto at Narcity, because we don't, I think, like, you know, where we started, from very humble beginnings, where we started very much at the bottom. So we try to always have something for everyone, and that has been what has carried our accounts team to even today. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
All right, and we have another question. Let's see, we have just a few more minutes. This is from Ed Winnick, and it says, are you able to track from programmatic native display and owned and operated native drivers to the articles as well? And it says basically more than just Facebook search, Insta, and Twitter. For instance, we promote with Taboola and Nativo, both on and off our own website.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can answer that. So the way that, because I came from the publishing world, I know what you mean. You're doing all of these different tactics, and Minnie alluded to this as well, as, you know, they might be doing some promotion on different avenues, even e-newsletters. So the way that the Pressboard analytics side works is we have our own analytics code that you can use, which is proprietary, and it does page analytics like page views, etc., on the content. But you can also connect various different data sources, including even your own Google Analytics. If you wanted to bring your Google Analytics data into your report, you can do that. We have integrations with Nativo, Polar, Ad Media, and those are all being built, and the one that's being built right now is Google Ad Manager and Taboola Outbrain, so that you can bring in your distribution, whether it's on Facebook, or whether it's on-site native ads, or whether it's even external native ads. So maybe you're running a Nativo campaign through their third-party network. You're able to pull all that data into one report to tell this cohesive story where you're saying, hey, we did 4.3 million native ad impressions, and that drove 2,464 people reading the article, and those people spent 46 seconds on it, scrolled 75% of the way through. And then we also have a shortened link tracker built in there so that you can say, and of those people, 6% of them then clicked on a link and went to the brand website. So the idea is, how do you tell the full story to the client from, hey, we did lots of impressions on native ad units and in social. That drove a lot of attention to the content itself. How did people engage with that content, and what did they do next? So we built that integration. And then there are a lot of native ad networks out there, so we cover all of the major ones, but we also build custom integrations for publishers. We built Ad Media for a specific client, we built that in there. Nativo, we originally built for a specific client, now it's available to all users. Moat was required by a few publishers, so we built Moat in, and then more recently we've added Instagram, YouTube, etc. to that. So I hope that answers the question, but you can bring in all of your native ad units into that same report and include it as part of how you tell the client how things are performing.
Awesome. And Ed says, yes, that was a great answer. So awesome.
Thanks, Ed. Cool, great question, Ed.
Well, as we're coming to the top of the hour here, I want to remind everyone that the deck and the recording of this webinar will be in the member shared area. If you do not have that link, you're welcome to reach out to me. This is Allie, and I will be happy to send that to you in whatever you need. If you want a copy of the LMC member adopting agreement, we can do that too. So I'm basically the gateway to all things having to do with that. So if there's any other questions, I don't see any others coming through at the moment, but if you do have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me or reach out to Jared directly. I can also provide that to you as well. But anyway, Jared and Minnie, thank you. And Julia, thank you so much for putting this together. This was incredibly informative, and I really, really appreciate you guys taking the time out and being so thorough with your stories and your successes. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
it was great. Thanks for having us.
I would just add, if you have the chance to check out any of Narcity's content, if you're ever headed to Canada and you want to know where to go, Narcity's the place. And if you are a member of LMC, we do have both the agreement, which is significantly lower cost than people that are not LMC members, but also we built in a trial. Sometimes, integrating new technologies, you need to try it out first. So we built in an extended trial so that anyone can try the platform for free, do a couple campaigns, see if they like the reporting, because our goal is, how do you help local news not only survive but thrive without requiring you to have to staff up like crazy just to meet the needs of advertisers. So thank you so much for having us on there, and thank you, Minnie, for sharing the story of Narcity and yourself and how you joined.
Yes.
Oh, it was great. Thanks for having us.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I don't see any other questions coming through. So I guess that concludes our webinar. But thank you again, Jared and Minnie and Julia. Appreciate it. And we'll be talking to everybody soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody.